Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar for today. The webinar is entitled Labour Not in Vain, From Extreme Poverty to Sustainable Livelihoods. So my name is Matilda and I will be your MC for today. And on behalf of all of World Vision Singapore, we are very happy to have you with us here today. And thank you very much for choosing to join us for this webinar on a Saturday morning, despite it being a public holiday. So today, just some webinar guidelines before we start this session proper. For the best viewing option, please click on View Options at the top of your screen and select Side-by-Side mode. This would help to enhance your webinar experience today. And also, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen if you have any questions for our speakers or about our work. We will try to address as many relevant questions during the Q&A segment. Okay, this webinar is also expected to last about 1 hour and 30 minutes, and it is also live streamed. So a recording will be made available after the webinar, and for security purposes, please do not attempt to record the webinar on your own. So now to begin the program officially, let us watch a quick video on threats.
My father was a weaver. He worked on a hand loom and used to fix the big weaving machines. I don't remember much of him. He was a hard worker, and I learned that from him, but I was too young to understand what it meant when he died. The next few years were hard for us. My mother, Mian, took up the weaving business, and she would work all day and night on the one hand loom we owned. When I came home from school, she would still be working, and she would have to go to my uncle's houses to borrow rice to feed me. Then she would go back to work until late. I would save the little money I could find and give it to her to help pay my school fees. They were only $2 a month, but we were so poor we could barely afford it. In 2011, she heard about Vision Fund, and she got a loan for $180 to buy a weaving machine. I came home from school and saw her inside with the machine, and my mom looked at me and yelled, "Fine, our prayers are answered. We will be successful. Our lives have never been the same." She got several more loans from Vision Fund and grew the business into one of the most successful in the neighborhood. With the first loan, she got our first machine. With the second loan, she bought another machine. With the third loan, she hired our first employee and bought a third machine. And with the fourth and the fifth loans, she hired another employee and bought another machine. Now we have 4 machines and earn more than 6 times what we used to. We had to depend on my uncles to survive, but now we've become the ones our family can rely on. Last year, my cousin came to live with us. I used to see brothers playing together and I'll be jealous, but now I have him and we do everything together. My mom was able to pay my school fees, and because her business grew, I was able to keep studying. Last year, I was accepted into university. I'm majoring in biochemistry and spend my evenings studying. My mother has built a life for us, and through my education, I want to build a life for her when she gets old, and to be an example for my cousin to stay in school and study hard. I think a lot about what my father would say if he walked into our shop, saw how much it's grown and how well we are doing. My mom says he'll walk down the street telling the neighbors, "Look at my family. My wife is successful. My son is at university. I'm so proud."
The video that you have just watched is a true story about Ping and his mother Min Min. So while theirs is a happy story, there are still millions of children in our world today who continue to live below the poverty line, seeking a better future. So with COVID-19 in particular, we are expecting a lot more children to be further pushed deeper into poverty. So for today's webinar, we will be exploring in greater detail how vulnerable families in broken economies keep afloat, particularly in light of the current COVID-19 challenges, and what is World Vision doing to tackle sustainable livelihood challenges, as well as how we can make economic and financial systems work for the poor, particularly through microfinance. So to do this, we have lined up a series of exciting speakers who will be sharing with us their experiences. So let me introduce them to you one by one. So firstly, we have with us Mr. Adrian Merriman. He is the Chief Development and Impact Investment Officer, as well as the Interim Latin America Regional Head of Vision Fund, which is our microfinance subsidiary. So hi, Adrian. Do you want to turn on your camera?
I would be delighted to.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. Okay, and next up, we also have with us Ms. Pham Thi Lee, who is from Tien Lu, Vietnam, which is a World Vision Singapore supported community. So joining her as well, we have with us Lin as well as Twin, who are both World Vision Vietnam staff. So they will be helping us with the translations. So hi Lin, hi Lee, and hi Twin. You all want to turn on your, hi.
Hi, Matilda.
Yeah, does Twin want to turn on her video as well?
Yeah, I think she tried to turn on her video.
Hello, nice to meet you. Okay, thank you so much for joining. Okay, and lastly, we have with us Miss Christine Goh, who is both a World Vision supporter as well as a strong advocate for livelihood and microfinance. So hi, Christine.
Everyone.
Hello, nice to meet you. Okay, so at this stage, right, I would just like to remind everyone that if you have any questions during this webinar, either for the speakers or about World Vision's work in general, please feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Or alternatively, if you have any questions, you can also WhatsApp us at 6922-0113. Okay, so now I know some of you here in the audience may not really be familiar with World Vision's work, or you might be quite new to us. So I would just like to quickly share a bit on what we do. Okay, so World Vision is actually a Christian humanitarian organization. We work in nearly 100 countries worldwide, and we are dedicated to helping the most vulnerable children to overcome poverty and experience the fullness of life. Okay, so we serve people regardless of race, language, religion, ethnicity, and gender. And a key part of World Vision's work is to partner with local stakeholders to improve the well-being of children through multi-sector projects that addresses the root causes of poverty. So specifically, through our child sponsorship initiative, we promote transformational and sustainable development by improving 5 key sectors, such as economic livelihoods, education, healthcare, water, as well as child protection. Okay, and among these 5 sectors, the backbone of our transformational development work can be said to be our economic empowerment initiative, where we seek to empower families and communities to be self-sustainable. So how do we do this? We essentially work across the entire economic value chain, where we not only support families in their primary livelihoods, such as training farmers to increase agricultural productivity, but we also seek to help them to diversify and add new sources of income. So for example, it could be starting a small business or even expanding out into rearing livestock. So additionally, World Vision also helps producers to gain access to new markets and actively provide households with access to microfinance services. Okay, so I know some of you here are new to microfinance as well and are wondering what exactly is this microfinance that I'm talking about. So to give a background, microfinance is a core component of economic empowerment. It typically consists of 3 main aspects. You have savings, loans, as well as insurance. And each of these components seek to empower underserved families to generate their own incomes so that in the long run, they do not have to rely on charity and can be self-sufficient. Okay. Now, because microfinance is very much a financial service, World Vision's microfinance work is actually done in collaboration with our subsidiary called Vision Fund. So this unique setup actually allows us to harness significant synergies that might not be possible if World Vision did it on our own. So how does that work exactly? So in the early days, when World Vision is working in a community, we are able to combine the best of World Vision's livelihood projects together with Vision Fund's ability to provide microloans. So this helps to give vulnerable families a head start in breaking the cycle of poverty. Subsequently, towards the later stages, when World Vision finally graduates from a community that has reached a certain degree of self-sustainability, Vision Fund is able to stay on to continue the good work that World Vision has started. So they are able to help local people to take their journey of development further by improving small business development as well as income generation. So I know some of this of what I have said may still be a bit abstract to you. So let's watch a short video to better understand how microfinance works before Adrian takes us into a deeper discussion on microfinance and its impact on vulnerable communities.
A cycle is never ending, but it begins with one person. For example, Essie from Ghana. Essie has 2 sons and makes a living baking bread. Her husband recently died and she lost half of the family's income. She comes to our branch and talks to our loan officer, Frederick, about growing her business. We give her tips on managing her money and ways to save a little each month. We loan Essie just $400. With the money, Essie buys a used oven and van, so now she can produce double the amount of bread and travel to larger markets further away. Essie has more confidence and is hopeful about the future for her and her sons. Demand for her business grows. Essie sells bread to other businesses. We teach her how to market her products and find new customers. Essie hires her first employee, Frida. Hiring Frida gives her time to experiment. She starts to make cakes and biscuits. The boys are happy at school. They no longer need to help out at the bakery and have more time for their studies. Frida has a younger sister called Amma. She needs glasses but can't afford them, so Frida saves up her wages to buy a pair of glasses for her sister. Now Amma no longer gets headaches and can concentrate much better in class. Essie meets Frederick and pays back the money she borrowed. Frederick reports back to the office and goes on to lend to someone else in need.
Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of microfinance, let me invite Adrian to share a bit more on the wonders of microfinance and how it is a game changer in improving livelihoods and economic empowerment. So Adrian, please.
Thank you, Matilda. It is a real pleasure to be with you here this morning. I'm going to share, as Matilda suggested, about Vision Fund and why mission-driven microfinance, which is what we do, is such a powerful tool, particularly in this COVID-stricken world that we're living in currently. Given the events that are taking place in Myanmar, I will also share a little bit about what our role and what we're doing in Myanmar at the end of my talk as well. I'm having trouble advancing the slides. Perfect. Thank you. If we could advance again. Terrific. Vision Fund is very much a part of World Vision, and World Vision is about going to the most fragile regions in the world and serving the most vulnerable. So when Vision Fund looks at microfinance, it looks at microfinance through exactly the same lens that World Vision does. We want to lend where and to whom others won't. And that generally means rural areas. It means women with children. It means serving the agricultural communities and making loans into agriculture, all of which are things that generally aren't done by microfinance institutions, which tend to focus on urban areas where the population concentrations are high and the loan sizes tend to be higher. We do exactly the opposite. We are currently in 28 countries around the world, and we're in 6 countries within the Asia Pacific Rim, 11 in Africa, 7 in Latin America, and 4 in Eastern Europe. I'm going to have to ask, thank you very much. As I said, we are very much a part of World Vision, and World Vision takes a holistic approach to lifting the poor out of poverty. That means we work in a number of different areas: water and sanitation, education, healthcare, child protection, and critically in economic empowerment. What's in front of you is the economic ladder. And we start with the ultra poor, those at the very, very bottom of the pyramid who aren't really prepared to take loans. That's where World Vision plays a huge and important part. We then, as our the beneficiaries of World Vision move up that ladder, we take them on in the extreme, when they're extremely poor, with lending into savings groups. And then over time, we help them move up that ladder. Now, we're in a very interesting period of time. Until very recently, we saw huge progress around the world with people moving up that ladder. The last year has reversed that. I'm going to share some numbers with you later. But in the last year, we've seen millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions around the world very much sliding back down that ladder. And that actually is critical to what we're doing today, which we'll also get into. If we could flip to the next slide, please. I'm not going to dwell on this slide too much, but I'm often asked, does microfinance work? These figures are from Myanmar, and they demonstrate that of those clients that start below the poverty line with us, roughly a little less than a third of them within 2 years rise above the poverty line. And this is a lag indicator, so the success is actually better than that. The other thing I'd point out, and this is very interesting, families with children tend to do better than those who don't, dramatically better. And about 35% of those with children within 2 years who started below the poverty line have moved above. If we can move to the next. One of the other things that makes Vision Fund special is that we have a very interesting track record of successfully lending into disasters. Now, as you would imagine, what generally happens when a typhoon or a drought or flood hits, most bankers you would think would run the other way, because bankers lend, and most microfinance professionals lend on the back of cash flows, and they lend on the back of assets. When a disaster hits, those cash flows, that income, and the assets tend to be destroyed. They don't exist. So most bankers run away. We had an interesting test with Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines in 2013, which, as you probably know, was absolutely devastating. And we did exactly the opposite. We actually leaned in and we lent into that disaster. What we found is that the communities where we lent in on that disaster actually flourished post the typhoon. They quickly rebuilt homes, they got businesses going again, and the community recovered rapidly. The other thing that was interesting is that our repayment rates were higher than we normally, or than you would expect. They were what we normally would have or better than. And the same thing was true when we did the same thing in East Africa. So terrific success. If we could, okay, great. Now, I'm going to take a moment to talk about COVID before I go back to talking about lending into disasters. COVID has hit the poor in ways that are far greater than for those of us who live in developed economies. There haven't been economic stimulus packages. There haven't been safety nets. When the shutdowns hit, that meant months where the markets were closed, where transportation wasn't possible, and where in essence, there was no ability to earn the daily source of income that poor families generally rely on. And what happened was that those who had businesses, and to survive and to have their families survive, had to consume the working capital that the businesses relied on, and they had to sell assets to gain income to be able to feed the family. What we found in a study that we did was that approximately 90% of our clients experienced a significant decrease in revenue, which again led to that consumption of working capital and assets. And what we found was that these clients didn't have money left to restart businesses. If we can move on to the next slide. I'm sorry, if we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So I mentioned a little while ago that this pandemic has really impacted the poor. The World Bank believes that at least 150 million people are sliding back down that ladder into extreme poverty. The World Food Bank believes that acute food insecurity is doubling to 265 million on top of the already 690 million that were already chronically food insecure. Now, as I mentioned, in this environment, the developing world does not have safety nets, does not have economic stimulus packages. In fact, the economic stimulus package tends to be what we call recovery lending. And this is lending into a disaster. And what we do is, and what we are doing through this period, and we're doing it very successfully, and we're doing it around the world, is we are lending funds for working capital. So those whose families have been knocked down, whose businesses have been knocked down, and need working capital to get their businesses going again, who need to be able to reacquire the critical assets that make their businesses function, we're lending into that. Now that has a secondary benefit. Not only does it help our clients get back up on their feet, it injects liquidity into the communities. And as liquidity goes into the communities begin to, the economies of those communities begin to work again. So we are very, very much the economic stimulus package for this environment, for the developing world. If I could go to the last slide, I want to spend a moment talking about, if we can move to the last slide. Terrific. I want to spend just a moment talking about what's happening in Myanmar and an interesting and unique role that we found ourselves in, which was somewhat unexpected. To set the stage, I just want to say that in Myanmar, we have a huge operation. We have over 200,000 clients in the country. And we, as in other places, operate in the rural areas. We focus on the rural areas, and we focus on the vulnerable. Interestingly, we were the first, and to my knowledge, we remain the only one operating in the Rakhine state, which is where all the issues related to the Rohingya people have been. And so we're operating actually on the very front lines of where there are very serious underlying issues and where poverty is a real issue. We have 2 branches and 4 sub-branches in that area. We promote economic resilience in the country through not only lending, but savings mobilization. And we do a lot of education around financial literacy, safe migration, anti-trafficking, and we do that across the country. Now, as you know, the country, in given current events, is in a very unique and difficult situation. Interestingly enough, there are 3 kinds of financial service providers in the country. There are the large commercial and retail banks, there are the NGOs, and there are the regulated MFIs. We are a regulated MFI in the country. Interestingly, the commercial and retail banks can't function. They're very high profile, and if they open, they get targeted. The NGOs have been forbidden by the government from opening. That leaves the regulated MFIs, and many of them have shut down out of because they're afraid to open. We have taken the position that we are going to monitor the country carefully on a daily basis. We open where we can. We have roughly 55 branches, and as we speak, roughly 45 of them are open on any given day. Now, in Myanmar, we're dealing with the same impoverishment issues from COVID that we're dealing with everywhere else in the world. In addition, we're dealing with a growing season that's coming and a serious need for capital in order to purchase the inputs for the farmers to grow. That growing season begins in May. So we are actually positioning ourselves as we speak to lend very heavily into that growing season, in addition to doing all the recovery lending that we're doing. We're doing everything we can to help the people of the country continue as they go through many other difficulties. So with that being said, I just want to thank you very, very much for taking your Saturday morning to be with us and for spending time with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for sharing your insights. So now you have heard Adrian share about the unique potential of microfinance to complement traditional development and ensure sustainability by building social and economic capital in the communities, especially in times of COVID-19. But the question really is, what is the real impact on children, the families, and the communities that we serve? So right now, we have with us Lee, who is one of World Vision Singapore's very own beneficiaries from Tien Lu area program in Vietnam. So she will be sharing her testimony. So can I invite Lee as well as Lynn to help to translate? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I will be the translator for Miss Lee to sharing her experience. Chị Lý ơi, chị chia sẻ thêm một chút về chương trình tài chính vi mô đã hỗ trợ, đã giúp đỡ cho gia đình mình có thể phát triển kinh tế rồi cải thiện gia đình, rồi là đặc biệt là trong giai đoạn Covid-19 như thế nào chị nhỉ?
Tài chính vi mô thì tôi đã vay cái phần tiền tài chính vi mô ấy về để chăn nuôi này, hoặc là cấy cày thêm ruộng để tăng thu nhập ở trong gia đình. Thế trong thời gian mà dịch Covid-19 thì là chúng tôi cũng không có công ăn việc làm, nhưng mà chúng tôi đã vay được cái tầm tài chính vi mô này, một số tiền đấy để chăn nuôi hoặc là trồng trọt ở trong gia đình này để cho nó tăng thu nhập cao, cho nên là nó đỡ cái tầm tiền chi phí nó không hợp lệ lắm. Chị Linh ơi, có cần gì ngại dịch?
Okay. Yeah, so Miss Lee is sharing that through the microfinance loan, it helped her and the people in the community to diversify and increase their income, improve the quality of life and their child well-being. She said that the repayment method is very simple, and it helped them to build up the saving habit. In addition, the program has helped many households to get out of the over-indebtedness and avoid black credit or the illegal credit in the community, especially during COVID-19. Even though in her communities or business there is no positive case in her community, but all business activity has been postponed, and it was very difficult for her and her villager to sell the agricultural product. And with the loan, it like support them, and with the knowledge from training of livelihood group and the loan from microfinance unit, she was able to bought more chicken to raise during COVID time. Okay, chị Lý ơi, chị có thể chia sẻ tiếp được không ạ?
Con chia sẻ vẫn này thì là vì vay cái tầm tài chính vi mô này thì lúc trước thì chúng tôi cũng không có tiền, nhưng mà khi là để muốn làm một cái công việc gì đó nhưng mà không không có một đồng tiền thì tôi sẽ vay được cái tầm tài chính vi mô này, một số tiền đấy tôi sẽ chăn nuôi thêm trong gia đình, rồi cày cấy để cho nó tăng thu nhập cao trong gia đình trong cái thời điểm Covid-19. Chúng tôi vì là không có công ăn việc làm nên là nuôi con gà ra là mình sẽ có trứng mình để ăn, mình không phải mất đồng tiền mình mua nữa. Còn là nếu mà ăn không hết thì chúng tôi sẽ bán đi để cái tiết kiệm tiền đấy để chúng tôi tích lũy lại để giả một cái số tiền hàng tháng của tài chính vi mô này, để chúng tôi quen cái thói tiết kiệm tiền để giả cái phần tài chính vi mô nó hợp lý hơn. Và chúng tôi không phải là vay những cái tín dụng đen nữa, vì là lúc trước mà không vay được cái tài chính vi mô này chúng tôi phải vay cái tín dụng đen, lãi suất nó rất cao, vì là không 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 có thể là chi trả được. Nên là khi mà biết cái tầm tài chính vi mô này vay là chúng tôi vay cái tài chính vi mô này nó rất hợp lý với gia đình chúng tôi ở nông thôn.
So during COVID time, she and her husband cannot do casual work. From the taking the loan from microfinance, she can invest in her chicken raising. So she used vegetable from the garden to feed the chicken, and with the knowledge from the training of livelihood program of area program in World Vision, she know how to take care of the chicken, vaccinate the chicken by herself. Her chicken grow fast with good quality. Not able to sell the chicken to the trader, she sell it in the local market, and she also use the egg to feed her children, like get their children more nutritious food, and she saves the money from selling chicken to pay for monthly installment, and it helped her to take care of her children. Chị ơi, chị có thể chia sẻ thêm về việc là cái khoản vay này thì hỗ trợ gia đình mình như thế nào từ lúc trước khi mình vay này, và sau đó thì mình có thể chăm sóc con cái của mình tốt hơn như thế nào được không ạ?
Trước kia tôi chưa vay được cái tài chính vi mô này thì tất nhiên là chăm sóc con cái nó cũng không được cho nó đầy đủ lắm. Khi mà tôi đã vay được cái tiền tài chính vi mô này, tôi chăn nuôi thu nhập trong gia đình, tôi đã nuôi dạy các cháu ăn học và nắm được nhiều kiến thức để chăn nuôi này, hoặc là được đi tập huấn, những các buổi tập huấn về để cách chăn nuôi để tăng thu nhập trong gia đình. Sau đấy là tôi lại phải nuôi 3 con ăn học nữa, mà cái khoản tiền mà tôi vay cái tầm tài chính vi mô này, tôi còn hàng tháng tôi còn phải là cho cháu đi khám và chữa bệnh. Còn trước kia mà chưa có cái tiền mà tài chính vi mô này thì tôi cũng muốn chăn nuôi nhưng mà không làm một cách nào cả. Khi mà vay được cái tài chính vi mô này thì tôi đã tự tin hơn những cái đồng tiền hoặc những cái sản phẩm tôi mua, hoặc là tôi về để tôi kinh doanh một cái đồng tiền đấy để hàng tháng cho cháu đi viện.
Okay, so her family were very poor before. She had 3 small children, and the oldest child suffered from a very serious disease. So she had to take care of them full time and cannot like do something more. Their agricultural land is very limited, and they don't have enough capital. They cannot borrow from the bank due to lacking of land certificate, and their family income only rely on a very small rice paddy field. During a meeting with the village woman union, she learned about the loan from microfinance unit, and she applied for the first loan around 10 million Vietnam dong, equal to $400 to expand the rice paddy field. And at that time, her family also were given a support with account from World Vision Vietnam. So with the loan from microfinance unit and support from World Vision Vietnam, she can bring in a more stable income. And she also received the training from World Vision Vietnam. With that training, with the rye cultivation technique training from World Vision Vietnam, her field, her rye fields have less pest and disease. She can reduce the cultivation cost and gave a high yield. And she find that the loan is very suitable for her family. It is simple, and she can pay it like in a small amount every month. With the next loan cycle, she decide to buy an additional account. So with account from World Vision set 2 account, and with that 2 account, like she can have a big access, and then by selling by the money from selling the rice and cow, she can afford tuition fee and extra classes for her children, and she can buy bicycle for them to go school instead of walking. And now they have nutritious meal, and they can enjoy like better lives, especially the first one when she has money for her treatment. Yeah. Chị Lý ơi, thế
Dạ.
thì từ cái kinh nghiệm của chị ấy, thì chị có thêm cái chia sẻ, cái hỗ trợ gì ở trong cộng đồng không chị? Để giúp cho những người khác ở trong cộng đồng của chị được không?
Coi như là hỏi lại không nhỉ?
Vâng, thì từ cái kinh nghiệm của chị đã thành công trong cái việc sử dụng vốn vay này ấy, thì chị đã giúp đỡ cho cộng đồng của mình như thế nào ạ?
Thì là tôi vay cái tầm tài chính vi mô này, lúc trước là tôi biết tôi vay, nhưng mà khi tôi sau là tôi vay về thì tôi sẽ làm như thế vì là nó nó tăng thu nhập cao, thì tôi đã giới thiệu những các chị em ở trong hội phụ nữ ấy là lên vay cái tầm tài chính vi mô này về gia đình, để mình có một đồng tiền để mình muốn mua cái này thì mình có đồng tiền đấy để mình cho tăng thu nhập cao trong gia đình. Cho nên là dân tôi sẽ rất có nhiều người cũng muốn vay, nhưng mà vì không biết là vay ở đâu, vì là tôi đã giới thiệu những mọi người, anh chị em trong hội là vay cái tầm tài chính vi mô này, hàng tháng tiết kiệm ra mà giả một số tiền, đến lúc mình giả xong là hết. Cho nên là nó rất là hợp với cả nông thôn của chúng tôi, thì tôi sẽ vay cái tầm tài chính vi mô này.
So as Chili received some success in her model of farming, she shared the experience of using the loan for cow, chicken raising, and rye cultivation to her villager. So before, the villager is only cultivate a few acres of rye and do not know what to do with their free time, and they're afraid to borrow because they're afraid that they don't have income to repay. But with the experience for sharing from Chile, the villager like feel encouraged, and they also apply for the loan. Now, during the regular cluster meeting, Chile and other often sharing about family financial management, about saving habit, and about the cultivation and animal husbandry technique. So the cluster, at first, the cluster had only 20 people. Now it's increased to 70 people. And everyone are very active in doing their business now. They know like to do casual work or to buy and sell at local market, and expand the animal husbandry to diversify their source of income, so they can ensure the monthly repayment and expand their business. And she feel like the methods of microfinance is very suitable for rural people, for farmer in rural like her. Okay. Okay. And chị Lý ơi, thì ở đây thì chị có thể chia sẻ thêm về những cái hỗ trợ của chương trình vùng và chương trình bảo trợ trẻ đến với cộng đồng của mình được không?
Tôi là chương trình tầm nhìn thì đã về giúp những nông thôn chúng tôi, là những đứa cháu mà không may cháu bị ốm đau, hoặc là những gia đình có hoàn cảnh khó khăn, thì là có hộ nghèo, thì là tầm nhìn đã hỗ trợ các cháu đi khám sức khỏe của định kỳ của hàng năm, mà tầm nhìn đã cho các cháu đi khám định kỳ theo hàng năm, là tầm nhìn lo cho hết tất cả các cháu. Như trường hợp của tôi, như con tôi bị ốm như thế thì Nếu như trước kia mà chưa có tầm nhìn thì tôi cũng phải là lo một khoản tiền rất lớn, nhưng sau đấy có tầm nhìn rồi ấy, thì là tôi cũng bớt đi một cái nỗi lo âu rất là lặng ở trong người. Khi có tầm nhìn rồi là tầm nhìn là đưa cháu đi khám, nhưng đến giờ là con của tôi nó bị suy tủy, đến giờ này là cháu, sức khỏe của cháu cả bình thường, và tôi đã nuôi các cháu ăn học, bây giờ sức khỏe của cháu hoàn toàn là ổn. Cháu sẽ đi học với tất cả mọi người, và những các trường lớp này là những cái tầm nhìn đã về xây dựng những các cái trường học cho các cháu như thư viện này, hoặc là những cái trường mầm non này là các cháu được ăn bán trú này. Lúc trước thì chưa chưa có tầm nhìn thì là các cháu bị suy dinh dưỡng rất nhiều, nhưng sau khi có
Vâng,
tầm nhìn về thì sẽ bổ sung cho các cháu, cô giáo những các kiến thức để nuôi dạy các cháu, cho nên các cháu bây giờ không còn suy dinh dưỡng nữa.
dạ,
Và những các hộ gia đình là đã được kinh nghiệm của buổi tập huấn này, hoặc là đi dung thu vàng này, hoặc là làm cho cháu những cái hàng rào để tránh những cái mùa hè này xảy ra đuối nước các thứ. Còn
dạ,
vâng.
vâng, vâng, cảm ơn chia sẻ của chị Lý. Miss Lý feel very thankful to be supported by World Vision Vietnam, like both the child sponsorship program and microfinance program. Her firstborn child have a very serious disease, so before she not able to go to school and have don't have any treatment due to the poor situation of the family. Thanks to World Vision Vietnam, under the child sponsorship program, the child were taken care, were get treatment from the hospital, and from the microfinance program, the family can increase their income. She can afford the tuition fee, afford the healthcare additional cost, and now the child were able to go to school. She is going to get into high school now, and she is very confident, enjoy with other activities, and the ERA program has had many preschool and primary school in her community to build up the classroom, the function room, the library for children, and it also improved the qualification of teacher, like giving them some training on childcare, training on teaching techniques, and the parents are also equipped with knowledge about childcare by via training and participating in childcare contests. The ERA program also carry out the communication on nutrition and disease prevention at preschool. They also equip the knowledge and life skill for children aged from 6 to 15, and the children are active, confident in learning and social relationship. Parents paid more attention to children. And finally, the ERA program has reduced the child malnutrition and bacterial infection at the community. The mother with young children are trained in nutrition care and disease prevention. Monthly education, communication, and nutrition demonstration to the nutrition club. And they also have guidance for deworming, access to clean water, and the common disease, common medical examination and treatment. Yeah. In the past, the poverty rate were very high, but the villager only do some casual work, like cut the lotus seed and earn a very few income, only 20 to 30 million, 20 to 30,000 Vietnam dong per day, which equal to $1. So the livelihood project has helped them by introduce the model of microbiological compost, the new high yielding rice and maize cultivation technique, and support them with cow and chicken and mushroom. And the microfinance program come in to adding the capital for them to expand the good model training from livelihood project of World Vision Vietnam. So now the villager can have more stable income. Yeah, that's it. The
Okay.
sharing from Miss Lee. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynn, as well as Lee, for sharing your experience. It's really great to hear that the children, the family, as well as the community is doing well, and in part that World Vision and Vision Fund was able to help. So it's really nice to hear firsthand how World Vision and Vision Fund's activities have really made a difference to the people on the ground. So thank you for your sharing, and thank you also to the Vietnam staff for going all the way to Lee's house just for the webinar today. So thank you very much for all your efforts. Yeah. So at this stage, some of you might also be thinking like, wow, economic empowerment sounds important, especially from the testimony that Lee has shared, as well as the sharing that Adrian has given. But you could still be thinking that, yeah, although financial and economic systems can work for the poor, but all of this feels too big. Like, how can I help? Like, how can I as an individual help? So we have with us today Christine. So Christine is actually a World Vision and Vision Fund supporter, just like every one of you here in the audience today. She visited our field and she saw the work for herself and decided that she wanted to do more. So right now, without further ado, let me invite Christine to share her story and her testimony. Christine, please.
Hi. So I'm very glad to be able to share with you my microfinance journey over the past years. And I'm just trying to control the slides here. Oops, it doesn't seem to be working. Maybe Matilda, you can click it for me because it's not working on my end. Okay.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. Thanks.
All right. So I just cover why support microfinance. And that started with my visit to Vision Fund in Cambodia, and why I chose to work with Vision Fund and not other microfinance institutions. I also like to share with you my microfinance fundraising experience for Cambodia and Myanmar and Vision Fund. Next. Next slide. So my question is, which would you choose, right? If you have $1,340, it's about 1,000 US, to help the poor, would you, one, buy water filters and latrines for 4 families that would benefit like 8 to 12 children, or give it to a microfinance institution like Vision Fund International to finance small businesses? I asked this question last year to an audience, and a lot of people chose one. And after hearing what Lee has shared just now about the tremendous impact that microfinance, World Vision and Vision Fund has on her family and her children, I think you may have chosen number 2. Next slide. Okay, I just want to share this story. Not sure if you remember this. This was several years ago, where this woman, the wife of a Changi airport worker who was killed in a freak accident. Next, click next. In 2014, and she received over 100,000 insurance payout, and the public was very sympathetic because she had 4 young children, as you can see, and about 800,000 plus donations poured in. So she had about $1 million. And the thing is, 1 million was spent, it was gone in 1 year, right? And how was it used? So some money was used for holidays and relatives, 50,000 to pay off debts. And she had a brother who had a transport business back in Malaysia, and she lent him some money. And when the business needed more working capital, she lent him more money. So in total was 500,000, and the business failed. And she thought she could invest in the business and maybe earn some money for her children. And the last 400,000, she said, well, I need to pay for rent, I need to buy milk powder, you know, so the 400,000 lasted her 5 months only. Now, I don't know about you, I don't earn 400,000 a year. 400,000 over 5 months is 80,000, and she was living in Malaysia. So that's a lot. And so sometimes when we give out compassion, but is giving out of compassion enough? Is that giving wisely? Next. So I was thinking about what makes, you know, we need to be have a purposeful, we need to be purposeful in giving, right? So I look at this framework, is it sustainable? Is it empowering and dignifying for the recipients? Is it scalable? How can I maximize the impact of every dollar giving? And importantly, is there good governance? Now, what I mean by sustainable, there were some people who visited the rural areas and they saw a lot of poverty. So they saw a lot of children with brown hair, and that's a sign of malnourishment. So they came back to Singapore and they said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy multivitamins and give to these children, because that's a very urban solution, right? In Singapore, a lot of us take supplements, but is it sustainable? After the multivitamins have been finished, you need to give them more multivitamins every month, right? So that's not a sustainable solution. So one person thought about the situation of malnourishment in poor rural communities, and he thought to get them to plant sweet potatoes for the villagers. And sweet potatoes are a very good source of nutrients, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin B, potassium, manganese, and trace minerals. And that helped the villagers to get better nutrients, instead of multivitamins, which is totally unsustainable. Next slide. So, as I've been a child sponsor with World Vision for decades, and in 2009, World Vision invited me to join them to see microfinance in action in Cambodia. So we traveled like 2 hours to this place called Kampong Spew, a very poor village. About 100 villagers stayed there, and they are really very poor. Prior to 2009, I visited Cambodia with my church. We went to also the rural area, so that was 2003. And what I noticed in the cities were there are a lot of motorbikes. And when my second visit in 2009, which is just 6 years later, I found that the city Phnom Penh had changed quite a lot. In place of the motorbikes, there were a lot of cars. But when I went to the rural areas, I found that nothing much had changed, right? The city had moved on, had progressed, but the rural areas, life had not been changed. So poverty is still very overwhelmingly rural. And that's because, it's very difficult for them to get, you heard from Lee in Vietnam, it's so difficult to get, the banks are not even there, they can't even borrow. So they don't have the capital to start any businesses. And what they have is they have only access to the black market or the money lenders, and they charge exorbitant rates. So they end up in debt, they end up selling their land, they end up in poverty, and this cycle continues. And so economist Milton Friedman said, the poor stay poor, not because they're lazy, but because they lack access to capital. So when I went to Cambodia, what they did was they brought us to see the clients, to interview clients like Lee, for example. And also they showed us the process overview of how they, market or, teach the villagers about microfinance. And so I saw the community group meeting, and this group of 20 people, women were there, and they were just sharing about their experience and sharing each other. And also I saw how Vision Fund, in addition to providing microloans, which is small business loans, also help the villagers by teaching them financial literacy, right? And teaching them business skills so that the business can be successful. And a lot of the borrowers are women. So I asked them why they're women and why there's so few men. It's because the men have big ideas, and some of the men use the proceeds for other purposes. gambling, alcohol, or women, instead of putting it to the business. Whereas the women, because they are concerned about the children and the education of children and the future of the children, they tend to have more realistic expectations of the businesses, so they are more successful. So there in that trip, I found that microfinance has really the ability to transform people by giving them the dignity of work instead of just getting handouts. And they are able to buy water filters, get better sanitation. They can get better food. They can access to healthcare. They can send their children to school. And as you know, in Cambodia, there's a lot of trafficking of children. And there's a lot of human trafficking, and that's because of poverty. So that's the poverty is one of the root causes of human trafficking and the slave trade. So that I saw was very powerful for microfinance to tackle all this. Next. So what I learned was microfinance has this multiplier effect. So this is very interesting to me, and I'd like to just share with you this short video, which is from Vision Fund, on how this multiplier effect works.
Imagine how it feels to help one child. Now imagine how it feels to help hundreds. When you donate to World Vision's Microfinance work, that gift transforms into vital loans that help multiple families over a long period of time. So, how does it work? Well, let's say you donate $1,000. We use your donation to borrow more money from financial markets. This means your $1,000 almost doubles in value. Next, we take this leveraged amount and transform it into small loans. The average loan is less than $450, so your donation can now provide nearly 5 loans to people wanting to start or grow a small business. As our clients increase their incomes, their children experience better living conditions and a more secure education. In fact, the $1,000 you donate helps 15 children in the first year alone. But remember, the money we lend out is given back. Our average loan term is around 10 months, and loan funds are recycled and lent to a new borrower. That means that over 5 years, 4.5 loans turn into 27 loans, impacting 87 children. And over 10 years, we're able to provide nearly 54 loans, improving the lives of 174 children, with the original $1,000 donation that you gave us. This is the power of microfinance. Through leveraging and recycling, your one donation has the potential to impact hundreds of lives for years to come. Imagine how it...
I don't know about you, but that to me is very exciting, how my $1,000 donation can be transformed over the years, over 5 years, over 10 years, into such a big amount. So I've taken this slide that you can see, I've taken it from Vision Fund's multiplier effect, right? Or multiplier calculator. And you can see that $1,000, when I donate, say, $1,000, there's an initial impact today, right, of $2,664 that's lent out. And over 5 years, it grows to $4,884. Right, because it's repaid, relent, and leverage, right? Leverage meaning borrowing from financial institutions, right? And this amount grows to $16,872. So financially, in financial terms, for those of you who want to look at numbers, right, it's a compound annual growth rate of 76%. That means $1,000 grows at 76%. To reach $16,872 in 5 years. Now, I wish that if I had an investment like this, it would be great retirement savings plan for me, right? And I'm very excited by this because it shows that I can give my $1,000 and it can grow that much over that many years, compared to just giving $1,000, say, to some other courses where it just ends up being consumed and does not get transformed. So this, I just wanted to share with you this multiplier effect, because that's very interesting discovery for me. Now, then why did I decide to work with Vision Fund? Vision Fund is different from any other bank working targeting the poor, right? Or rather, the smaller companies and financing small businesses. Vision Fund's difference is that it's because it's working with World Vision, and it's empowering women. Most of the borrowers in Asia, 87% of Vision Fund's borrowers in Asia are women. And so there's a lot of financial inclusion. Even in the world right now, for bigger businesses, small, medium enterprises, it's difficult for women-led organizations to get funding. And it's even more so in the rural areas. What I also like about Vision Fund is not a for-profit institution, right? So a lot of microfinance institutions want to make money from the poor, and so they focus on the urban areas, and they don't care about the rural areas where operating costs are much higher, and it's a lot more complicated. So Vision Fund has a what they say is a double bottom line, both a financial impact as well as the social aspect of it in terms of improving lives and positive outcomes for children. And also, because the poor are mostly in the rural areas, 71% of its microfinance activities are in the rural areas in Asia and agriculture areas, where the agricultural loans where the poor are. And because of this unique integration with World Vision, working together, to provide, clean water, healthcare, sanitation, market access, advice in terms of crops, in terms of the right seeds, high yield seeds. That's a very, very powerful combination, because money, just giving money alone does not make a business successful. All these things are brought together through World Vision, working with Vision Fund to help the poor. The other thing that was stressed also when the community groups met with each other and with the loan officers is that they stressed that that they should not be over borrowing. They should be able to repay the debts. So the key is not to lend simply because you want to make money, but to do it responsibly. And Vision Fund has an operating self-sufficiency of 93%. It means that they will not be going under anytime soon. They can support themselves and continue. And it's interesting that the repayment rate is 97.9%. That's very high, considering these are poor people. There's usually very little or no collateral. And it's quite interesting. In Singapore, one of the largest crowdfunding platforms supporting SMEs, their default rate is like 4.97%. That means their repayment rate is 95%, which is lower than what we're seeing or what Vision Fund is experiencing with the really poor. So in addition to financial loans, there are also social loans to buy filters, latrines, solar energy, etc. So the next thing I looked at was governance, because there are a number of, next slide. There are a number of organizations that come and ask for money, and they show all these very moving videos of children. And what I do is I will do a quick check on Charity Watch or Charity Navigator to see whether they've filed their financials. And some of them have not filed their financials for years. And so that's a clear red flag. So I was very glad that the World Vision has been filing its financials, although it does not need to. And that's needed for transparency. So Charity Watch has given World Vision an A- a rating, which is good. And you can see some of the other details that they've given in terms of how much of the funds have been given goes to the beneficiaries. And there is a charity navigator has given them an overall score of 90.12% and a 4-star rating. That's the best rating. So next slide. So is it sustainable? Yes. Is it empowering and dignifying for the recipients, for the beneficiaries? Yes. Is it scalable? Yes. Its Vision Fund is present in 28 countries across 4 regions, and I can maximize the impact every dollar of the giving. So you can see, if I give $1,000, it gets transformed into $16,872 over 5 years. So I can stretch the dollar, I can multiply the effect. And some people say, why don't I support Singapore? Yes, I do. But you find that our dollar goes a lot further in the poorer countries, in countries like Myanmar and Cambodia. $50 a month can support a family. Unlike Singapore, you can't get by on $50 a month. And lastly, the governance aspect. I find that's good governance. I'm happy that Vision Fund is rated so highly. I just want to share with you also my microfinance fundraising with Cambodia with Vision Fund. So that was back in 2015. And I was asked to help raise 30,000 US dollars. That was absolutely the largest amount that I've ever tried to raise. I was a bit hesitant, but I decided to take up the challenge, and I approached approached my friends, my former clients, and they came through with a lot of donations. And the most unlikely people, the people I thought would donate didn't donate, and the people I didn't expect to donate that much donated a lot. So we exceeded the target, and so that was a very successful fundraising, and I'm glad that it helped a lot of people in Cambodia. And subsequently in 2018, Vision Fund sold the operations to a Korean bank called Worry. And this is the whole strategy of Vision Fund, that it is there when the banks are not. And when the situation or the community is such that banks are willing to come in to provide loans to the community, then Vision Fund will exit that market and redirect its funds to another country. So in 2019, I decided to raise funds for Myanmar. And that was a bigger amount. I felt that I could not raise so much. And I roped in a friend, you can see Jo Kim. And we did it using a crowdfunding approach, as opposed to a very slow, approaching people and friends previously with Cambodia. So World Vision has this crowdfunding page. So we put up this write-up, Promising Futures for Burmese Children. And through this, we share this link with our friends and our contacts, and they just come in and they can just read it and click on the link and donate, and it's automatically updated. So over about 1.5 years, we have closed this fundraising, and it's now closed, and we are looking at, I think World Vision is looking to launch a new cycle of fundraising for this project. So moving on to the next slide. So I ask you again, if you wanted to donate $1,000 US, would you buy water filters or give it to a microfinance institution like Vision Fund International? Next, in conclusion, I find that a contribution to Vision Fund Microfinance is a sustainable way of giving. It multiplies the giving, stretches our dollar, and empowers the poor to get out of poverty. Would you like to person powerfully impact the lives of the poor. We are truly blessed to be a blessing. Now, if we have any time for question and answers, I'll be happy to take any questions regarding this.
Yes, thank you very much, Christine, for sharing. Your testimony is really very inspiring, and you're right. Right now, now that we have all heard the three speakers share, some people in the audience have actually been sending questions in. So we will now have the Q&A segment. And for those of you who have not sent in your questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen to share your question, or alternatively, you can also WhatsApp us at 69220113. Okay, so due to the time constraint, we'll only be able to do a few questions, but we'll try our best to answer as many as we can. And otherwise, if not, anyone who's free to stay back after the webinar will also be happy to tackle the questions then. Okay, so maybe as a start, I'll kickstart the first question, which came in. So maybe Adrian might be a good person for this, or whoever has answers can also jump in. What are some of the challenges that Vision Fund faces when trying to implement microfinancing programs?
The first challenge is finding a stable environment in which we implement programs. And so we like to find countries that have relative stability. From there, we have to build out staff, and then identify and set up branches in the areas where we find the most fragile, in the most fragile regions and where the most vulnerable are. The biggest, we have done it many times, and we've done it very successfully. The biggest challenge we face, to be honest with you, is raising the capital to go into new countries. And that tends to be the biggest challenge. Once we have the capital, we have the processes, we have the technology, we have the know-how to go and to do what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Adrian. And we do have another question as well. So on top of REACH, how does World Vision or Vision Fund measure the impact? How much of those given loans develop into a better life rather than falling into indebtedness? So maybe Adrian, you want to take that, and Lynn, if you have anything you want to share as well from a field office perspective.
That's a very good question. The reality is that all clients fall on a bell curve. Some do extremely well from the loans. The center of the bell curve does well from the loans, and there's always a little tail to the left of the bell curve that perhaps gets hurt by the loans. We work very hard in our loan origination to try to make absolutely certain that we only lend to people who are going to have the repayment capacity with their businesses to repay. And that's a big focus. The second thing we're doing is we use tools like progress or poverty probability index, which tells us where a client is relative to the poverty line in their country. And we measure that at the beginning of every loan cycle. And we want to see progress over time from those clients. And if we see we're not, the progress isn't occurring, we explore why. And if it's because we really shouldn't be lending to them, we don't lend. We work very hard to make sure that what we do doesn't damage clients. The final thing is that we use a group lending methodology for the poorest. And that methodology basically has a joint and several guarantee among all of the clients in the group. What we find is in local communities, the clients know who has good character and is prepared to repay, and who have good business models that will benefit from loans. And so the clients themselves, because there's a joint several guarantee and they're going to have to pay if members of the group can't repay, they make sure that the only people who are part of the group are people who will be successful. So that serves also as a form of credit bureau and has tended to work very effectively.
Thank Adrian. I think like what Adrian shared is most of the key point that lead to our work. I just want to share in the specific case of Vietnam, like now for us, the portfolio at risk is only 0.03%, which account for 8 clients over 13,000 clients, even under COVID-19, under effect of natural disaster, which means that when we do the loan appraisal, our loan officer are very carefully and work with client to see what is the suitable or the possible business for them, how they can repay the loan, not only giving the loan for them. Yeah, that's from our experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian and Lynn, for sharing your perspectives. Okay, we are going to just, in the interest of time, I'm just going to take one more question. I know, Christine, you alluded to this just now, but we do have a question here that actually asked about perspectives in terms of helping locally, starting with charity in your backyard versus donating towards beneficiaries overseas. So maybe do you want to elaborate a bit on that?
Okay, so prior to launching this fundraising, I have been speaking to a lot of people and volunteers in local charities and churches. So I also spoke to more recently, I also spoke to food bank, employee food bank. So they get food, they collect food and say from Marina Bay Sands, you know, and various eateries, and they donate the food to needy families. And this employee told me that, you know, the beneficiaries, they are poor, they don't have food, you know, but they are pretty fussy on what they want. They want, or they said, I don't like this brand of sardines. And this some churches who work a lot with the poor, and they give them cooking oil, you know, essentials every month. The old people said, I don't want this brand of cooking oil. I prefer another cooking oil. So to me, you know, the poor in Singapore don't seem that poor. They can be so fussy about the brands that they want. And there's so many charities, and there's social assistance, right? The government provides a lot of assistance. So I find that the feedback that I've received from many charities and people working in Singapore is that the poor in Singapore feel very, very entitled. Whereas out there, you know, you've seen the situation in Myanmar and in Vietnam, they are so poor, right? They are surviving on less than $1.90 a day, or less than $1 a day. And so I find that helping them doing vision, helping with microfinance, helping them overseas really stretches the impact of what I can do, right? So that $100 in Singapore, that $1,000 Singapore can only affect benefit like one or two people a month, but in the rural areas, it can benefit so many more people. So that's more bang for the buck, and the people are truly poor. And there's also a thinking that, you know, a life in Singapore, is it worth more than a life in Myanmar? No.
Yeah, I think those are quite insightful sharings. Like, thank you for your opinion on this matter. It's quite a sensitive issue, yeah. But I just wanted to share as well that our focus is, even though our focus is overseas, we do, World Vision as a whole, do acknowledge the good work that our local charities and government is doing, especially in the local scene, and that they have really strong social networks and fabric, which many of our neighboring countries sadly do not have. But we will continue as well. So World Vision Singapore actually also partners with local charities to understand as well as keep an eye or keep our pulse on the ground, even as we serve the communities abroad as well. So we do have local ministries, for example, reaching out to help the different areas in Singapore, especially in the area of youth empowerment. So these are some of the considerations perhaps that different individuals may have as well. But okay, right now, I think in the interest of time, we might have to stop the Q&A here. I'm really sorry about this, but there are actually very, very good questions that are still coming in through the Q&A function. So what we will do is that after this webinar, we will continue running the webinar so that whoever wants to stay on to discuss a bit more about it can continue to stay on. And whoever needs to leave can just leave so that we don't hold up anybody in case any of you are in a rush. Okay, but before we end, for those of you who were inspired by Adrian, Lee, as well as Christine sharing and would like to do more to help, some of you were asking about it. Here are some areas that you can actually contribute towards. Okay. So currently, World Vision Singapore in particular is supporting 2 livelihood and microfinance projects in Vietnam and Myanmar respectively. So our project in Vietnam is in the Tien Lu district where Lee is actually from. So last year, we successfully provided 325 people in Tien Lu with microloans, of which 82% were women. And this in turn helped to support 428 children and sustained 325 jobs. And this year, we are continuing to support them and aim to do more. Similarly, we also provided 70 people in Tai Chi, Myanmar with microloans last year, of which 84% were women. So this was the project that Christine alluded to, which she supported last year. So now I know some of you in the audience have actually raised the questions when are a bit concerned about the ongoing situation in Myanmar, about whether or not World Vision and Vision Fund can still operate considering the current conflict. So just to reiterate what Adrian shared earlier, World Vision and Vision Fund are actually one of the few NGOs on the ground who are still able to provide support as well as humanitarian assistance. So we are extremely thankful that the government has supported World Vision and Vision Fund to continue our operations even though it's in a constrained environment. And despite multiple challenges like the bank closures, World Vision and Vision Fund has sufficient resources to actually continue our work while we explore alternative means and create contingency plans. So this ability is in part due to the unique partnership between World Vision and Vision Fund, which I earlier mentioned in the introduction. So because of our combined size as well as our microfinance work, this has allowed us to have a certain degree of liquidity, and we are right now being led by the community need and are committed to do whatever we can or whatever we have to do to ensure that the funds are where they need to be to meet the needs of the local communities in Myanmar. So in fact, right now, Myanmar needs our help more than ever. Okay, so that's a bit of background into where we are located, and to give you some idea into how your funds can be used, here are some examples. So for instance, the average cost of an education loan in Myanmar and Vietnam is about 236 Sing dollars, and this can help to keep a child in school by supporting their school fees, uniforms, books, etc. And similarly, a donation of about $905 on average could support a struggling family with farming necessities like drought-resistant seeds, hose, fertilizers, irrigation kits, or even harvesting equipment so that they have enough to eat and earn a living. And similarly, another loan that you can that we also offer is like, for example, the small commerce loans. So these actually help to empower women who live on the edge of survival to own successful small businesses. So for example, we once had a beneficiary, or we have a beneficiary in Myanmar who borrowed a small microfinance commerce loan to improve her restaurant and expand her family business. So now the income has actually increased by 10 times. So it has grown from 15 USD per day to 150 USD per day. So similarly, you can empower other women to run a business, operate small grocery stores, buy a sewing machine, or even create handicrafts and more. So do note that the amounts listed on the screen here are average loan amounts, which may differ depending on the needs of the respective families. So this is just an indication, but it's not absolute. Okay. And aside from the microfinance work, if you are interested as well, you can also choose to sponsor a child for 45 Sing dollars a month to kickstart the family's livelihood and economic empowerment journey. Just like how Lee started with child sponsorship and got to know about microfinance. Similarly, child sponsorship is also a good way to introduce families and communities towards our microfinance work and kickstart their journey. Okay, so now we have about children waiting to be sponsored from about 13 countries, ranging from Africa, Asia, as well as the Middle East. And to find out more, we welcome you to visit our website by scanning the QR code that you see on the screen, or WhatsApping us at 6922-0113, and we will follow up accordingly. Okay, so I think this is all the time that we have today, and I would like to thank you and thank all the speakers, Adrian, Lee, Christine, Thuyen, as well as Lynn, for your insights, and for all the people who today took the time to attend this morning's webinar on a public holiday. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope that this has been an interesting and insightful webinar for you. So before you leave, we will also be having a feedback poll, and it will be greatly appreciated if you could take some time to provide your feedback for us. And for those interested to learn more, once again, please feel free to stay back and we can have a more in-depth discussion on all the questions that have been submitted. So thank you everyone, and hope to see you around. Okay. So we'll take maybe a few seconds before to go through the feedback poll, and then maybe we can continue answering some questions for those who would like to stay on. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I think thank you for those who are staying on. We do have some questions, so I would just let the conversation run. So one of the questions that we have is how much leverage is applied to the fund? How much risk does this involve? So this question is from Tuha, which I think she's still online now. So maybe Adrian, would you like to share a bit more?
I would be delighted to, Matilda. If you look globally, our portfolio globally is leveraged roughly 2 to 1. So we borrow $2 for every dollar we receive in donations. And we try to operate our microfinance institutions just above profitability. So we're able to borrow as much as we need to borrow. No one will lend to us if we're losing money. And we determine, in some countries, we leverage our balance sheet up to about 8 to 1. In other countries, we have an all equity balance sheet, which means that it's all donated money. And we basically, where the risks are low, we will leverage the balance sheet substantially. Where the risks are very high, we will do very, very little borrowing in that particular country. So we're very concerned about risk. We monitor risk very carefully to ensure that that we don't take undue risk. We have never found ourselves in a situation where we haven't been able to repay loans fully.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. Another question, I think maybe Christine may be good for this as well, but Adrian, if you want to chip in. So one of the questions we have is in Vision Fund's roadshow/campaign to publicize its work to the public, how does it overcome the difficulty of the lay person to grasp and be convinced of the multiplier effect of Vision Fund's microfinancing work? In theory, it sounds good from initial lending that there is a projected impact 3, 5, 10 years. But for someone who is unable to visit the Vision Fund project and see the impact for himself or herself, how are we able to persuade him or her to see beyond the numbers and to contribute their first donation?
Well, I find that the people are usually moved by when they hear the testimony of people like Lee, right, the direct beneficiaries, and how it has transformed their lives and their children, and being able to send them to school, get an education, and move up the economic ladder. So people are usually touched by all this. I must admit, the multiplier effect, sometimes people don't get it. But some people do. Maybe those that are more financially trained or have financial background can understand it and can explain it. The multiplier effect is something that works in the economy. It's not just something that is in Vision Fund, right? For example, during this economic situation, the government has pumped in a lot of spending in infrastructure, right? So that infrastructure spending will create more jobs for local companies, and that means that people have more money to spend, and so the restaurants will do better, you know, and that has a multiplier effect on the economy. So the same thing, the government is doing public spending to have a multiplier effect on the economy, boost jobs, to boost the economy. And our giving to microfinance, by being able to leverage that like 2 times, which by the way is not over leveraging, because banks typically leverage like 5-6 times, you know, say that's quite typical for other banks, like for example banks in Singapore. So if you can explain that your $1 of donation can be multiplied many times, then it's far more impactful than just giving, say, to, for example, the school pocket money fund.
Okay, thank you for that. So another question, sorry, there are a lot of questions and we are sorting through them right now. Another question that we have is, can loans be repaid during disaster? If not, how? What about the payment of bank loans to Vision Fund? And another question, which is on a similar question, is microfinance of women is a good idea, but what happens when there is flood, drought, and pests? So I guess it's all in the area of disaster and recovery loans.
Okay. What you probably want me to answer that one. So what I would say is that this was a fascinating, going through the whole COVID period was absolutely fascinating, because no one had ever faced what we've faced in the last year. And for a period of about 4 months, literally most of the global economy froze. And in the developing world, the economies froze very quickly. So what actually happened in these countries is, in many countries, the government actually mandated a rescheduling of all loans for clients who wanted them rescheduled. And in other countries, they didn't. But in all of those cases, we gave our clients, the ones who weren't able to actually pursue economic activities, the opportunity to reschedule their loans to go through that period of huge difficulty. And then on the back end, as it began to be clear that there was light at the end of the tunnel and the shutdown slowed down, we began to do massive amounts of recovery lending to help these clients who had gone through a period of literally seeing all of their working capital and assets decimated. So we began to lend in so they could restart their businesses, have the working capital to restart their businesses. And in turn, as they spent money in their economies, the economies and the communities they were in began to get liquidity and began to operate. So that all was a fascinating process to watch. Now, we as Vision Fund went through a period where we didn't know what was going to happen. So what we did was we actually we borrowed globally about $310 million from a variety of different lending sources to leverage the donations that we have. We have a portfolio globally of about $500 million. And so we ended up talking to all of the lenders, all of the big lenders where we were going to have loans coming due. And we literally sat down and said to them, listen, you know that we're ultimately good for the money. We need to make it possible for our clients to get through this. And what we're asking you to do is to help us by deferring the repayment of your loans by a year. And so we were able to negotiate with all of the lenders globally to put off our repayments for a year. And we in turn were working and walking carefully with each of our clients almost on an individual basis. That's over 1 million individual walks around the world. And to make sure that they actually were in a position to get back up and to be successful after this incredibly difficult pandemic, which many of these countries are still suffering hugely from. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Thanks, Adrian. Let me see what other questions there are. Okay. Sorry. Okay, I think there is one question here, but I'll take this one. So do you have a target amount for Vision Fund for various countries? And when the target is reached, how does World Vision decide on the new areas, and are there many? Okay, so right now for World Vision Singapore, we are actually focusing on Vietnam as well as Myanmar. So the way, how we structured the countries is that Vision, we selected those that are at the tail end as well as at the beginning of our area programs. So this enables us to really leverage, as what I mentioned, on both the synergy, on the capabilities of World Vision and Vision Fund. So at the beginning of the program, like for example in Tai Chi, we can really capitalize on World Vision's livelihoods, education, as well as our other projects, while simultaneously tapping onto Vision Fund's capabilities to offer microloans. So this helps to kickstart the ability of the communities to start their journey of breaking out of the poverty cycle. And the second one is really for the tail end, which is where Vietnam is. So they have successfully graduated in 2020. And right now we are working with Vision Fund to really help to see how we can continue working there and to so that we can help to accelerate or further the development of these countries. Maybe Lynn, at this stage, maybe would you want to share a bit on how it's like in World Vision Vietnam, especially since that this is since we are continuing there after the area program has ended. So how is Vision Fund World Vision Vietnam doing right now in microfinance in Tien
Uh, Thanks, Martina. So the World Vision Vietnam area program in Tiên Lữ already phased out in September 2020. After World Vision AP phase out, we are still continue our work in Tiên Lữ, and in this year we have planned to expand our operation in Tiên Lữ into 3 new communes which is outside of area program, because the people in that commune see that people in area program has microfinance program, they can borrow and they can increase their, improve their livelihood and increase their income. So the local government come to us and ask us to expand the work of microfinance in the new 3 communes. And however, due to the limitation of funding, we just can start with 1 commune first. But in the coming year, we hope that we can get more funding coming in to expand our work in Tiên Lữ, reach out for more people in need.
Okay, thank you very much, Lynn. I think we have pretty much covered all the questions for today. So I just want to say thank you very much to Adrian, Christine, and Lynn for staying on this extra time just to answer the questions and really shed more light into how microfinance works. So really thank you very, 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 very much for sacrificing your Labor Day, especially Adrian, since it's nighttime for you right now. Thank you so much. So I think for all the guests who are still on the webinar, I think that would be it for today. What we can do also is that if you have any questions, please WhatsApp 69220113, and we can also schedule a meeting with you to better understand if you have or explain if you have any questions or suggestions or thoughts, so we can share more about our work with you as well. Okay, so I think that should be all. So thank you everyone for your time and have a good day ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.